Hello, hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, I hope everyone doing really well today. I am exceptionally privileged. I feel terrific today because my guest is Wayne Butterfield. How are you, Wayne?
I am fantastic, thank you. I've had a great day so far, and it only gets better now I'm speaking to you, Irene.
It only gets better from here. You know what will make it even better? If that our audience is gonna comment on the talk we're about to have. We'll talk about automation, we'll talk about trends, we'll talk about what's next, how we should look in the future with fantastic automation space we're part of. I do wanna ask audiences to subscribe to Soga Talks. I want the comments, I want likes. We want people to see the fantastic expertly opinion we're about to share here. So please, yeah, follow on Twitter, on LinkedIn, subscribe to YouTube, the regular stuff, but most importantly, stay with us, listen till the end, because you're not gonna regret it. So Wayne, yeah, wonderful, yeah, happy to have you here. We said we're gonna talk about next big thing in automation. You are an expert, you are speaking around the globe. I do want to probe you on your things, okay? Why don't we start with big umbrella? People talk about intelligent automation all the time, people talking about automation trends. What do you think is cooking for all of us in 2022, Wayne?
Okay, wow, what a great opening question. So yeah, I mean, I've been involved in this world of automation now since 2010. So I'm showing my age a little bit. Um, and you know what? I think what's cooking in 2022 is probably not so much about technology, but there's a realization that maybe the next thing in automation is change management and cultural shifts and things like that, as opposed to just it being a massive technology play. I'm seeing that more and more, right? Probably over the last kind of 2 to 3 years, there are some real success stories, and then there are a load of organizations that are uh, struggling to create transformational change. And you have to kind of question, well, why can some organizations take these group of technologies and do wonderful things with them, and other organizations take exactly the same group of technologies and really struggle? And can't be the technology you would think. So it must be something else. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about, what are those other things? I guess I was really spoiled when I was at Telefonica back in the day. I didn't know how great a culture we had for innovating and wanting to make change. And number two, I didn't realize how well set up we were to take advantage of intelligent automation, because we had literally stripped transactional activities away from large parts of our organization. And we did that because we were shipping it into lower cost operations offshore in our outsourcing partners. And we didn't do that because we thought, hey, we're going to create a huge pipeline of opportunity for intelligent automation, because we didn't know that at the time. But certainly we did now. And so yeah, it's I think the next big thing, one big thing, is probably not to technology, and I do want to talk obviously today about technology, but maybe some of the softer side, the cultural side, the people side, that is going to be awakened in 2022, 2023, I think. And that's where I think we'll start to see the big changes happening. And that will then enable transformational change using intelligent automation and other technologies.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm not surprised that you're bringing people first, before we even touch platforms, before we even talk about technology capabilities. All right. So I'm not surprised, but let's spell it out. You mentioned transformational changes, and yet people kind of sometimes resistant or reluctant to changes. Okay. So before we dive deeper into automation, few things that you learn, few things that cultural shifts, a company will have to make? Some of the insights there, please.
Yeah. So no change is easy, right? We as people, I guess, are creatures of habit, whether we like it or not. And I spent a lot of time early on in my career in digital customer service, and the challenge that I had was to convert people from traditional means of contact on the phone and or email into these new channels that were predominantly enabled by the smartphone, so things like digital messaging, online chat, etc. And half it was the challenge was that people are stuck in the ways, and that's your consumers. They're used to a way of interacting with the brand. They're used to a way of doing things. I see this a lot. I've got my in-laws over at the moment, and to try and put certain types of food in front of them, it's like, oh, I don't want to eat that rubbish. But give them a good British banger, and they are, they absolutely love it because they're creatures of habit, and that's exactly the same of your employees. They've done things a certain way. They like things being done a certain way, and here we are with our no-code, low-code revolution, saying, "Hey, what you have done is great, but we need to change." And for a lot of organizations, when they have a lot of tenure, a lot of experience, that is not the easiest of things to do. And I think I've started to see, interestingly, and I did a webinar the other week where there was a really interesting case study where an organization had realized that they had a real cultural challenge with doing work in a different way. And their approach to doing this was that they were going to bring in new blood. They were, from day one, going to enable them with no code, low code capabilities to transform work. And part of their role, as well as doing the job, was to always be thinking about how they could do it differently, how they could do it better. And this is not a process improvement person. This is, Dave from customer service. It's Sam in finance. It's Steve over in HR, and it's Sally in procurement, right? This is not, we've created a process improvement team. This is your role now involves and includes process improvement as standard. And that is how they are going to approach this change to their culture. They realize that it is quite difficult to teach an old dog new tricks, and also if they don't think about their employees entering the workforce in a different way, then they're going to die a bit of a slow death. And I think that was so insightful when I heard that for the first time. And I've seen it with companies. If I think about the insurance industry, there's a lot of tenure in insurance. There's a lot of historic ways of doing things in insurance, claims, underwriting, etc. And then you have these newer entrants into the market. The startup, the app-based insurers, and some of the global brands, realize that they can try and transform, or they can do two things. They can buy these startups, or they could create a new entity within their industry that they would maneuver their customer base towards. And so, this way of trying to transform an organization's culture is huge. There are different ways of doing it. There are different approaches that have been taken. But I think that is a huge realization now, even at the people level, that you have to, this has to be an accepted way of just doing work. The future of work, and I quoted this, I think the winners and losers in the future of work are going to be how organizations enable their people to work with technology instead of technology. That really for me is kind of going to be really key for this. And people is at the very heart of it, right? We still now are not going to be able to remove people entirely from the enterprise. So we have to figure out how we can make and use the best qualities that we as humans bring, while removing the stuff that we add very little value in. And I break this down into kind of STEM and HECI. So STEM, science, technology, maths, etc. And HECI is kind of your feelings, your heuristics, empathy, sympathy, etc. It's these human characteristics that we have. That is very difficult to mimic in a technology. Not so much the transactional, rules-based, data-driven type of work, which we can automate now, even with technologies that are available. So
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about companies' objectives though, right? Because when we're touching automation space, it's got to be pain points that technology with people, or rather people with technology, will be solving. So what do you see happening out there this year, in next 5 years to come? What are the pain points we should be talking about?
Pain points, I guess, where constantly looking and chasing the next shiny object, right? We struggle to help ourselves, and that's really difficult to stop doing at the moment, because we're on such an exponential growth curve of new technology and innovation. It's really difficult, A, to stay ahead, B, to not feel like you're falling behind, because technology is changing at such a rate now. So that's kind of that's an issue. It's a thing that we will need to be mindful of over the next few years, and also the breadth of technology options that are out there. You mentioned intelligent automation before, hyper automation to others. It's no longer a technology; it's an ecosystem of technologies that are all working to automate work. And I can think of 6, 7, 8 different technology types that I think are needed as a baseline in order to automate large.
Let's name them. Yeah, let's name them. So we all defined on terms here. Yeah, there got to be what? RPA there? Is it? Yeah.
I would start. So I start with discovery. So let's think about process mining, task mining, communications mining. So a data-driven approach to understanding your business. There's a few technologies there. And intelligent kind of automation. If we think about RPA, OCR and image recognition, natural language processing, and any of the natural language capabilities, automated decision making, so machine learning, etc., and then conversing, so conversational AI, voice bots, chatbots, etc. And then at the back end of all of that, again, we need to really think about analytics, data and analytics workflow in order to bring all of this together. We should think about some of these technologies as not replacing entire roles. The way I see it is they are replacing tasks within process more often than not. And each of those technologies is replicating a human characteristic. And anybody who's seen me talk before, I will talk about handwork and head work. If you think about what you're doing with your hands, Irene, you generally are, you're moving your mouse, you're typing a little bit, you are doing kind of transactional type activities when you're using your hands. And, you often sit back and think about work. What am I going to do next? I might be reading something. I'll be making a decision. All of that is head work, right? It's characteristics that you are replicating. That's where your kind of AI comes into the mix. The replication of any mental activity, and all of those mental activities generally are taking place in your head, hence the head work thing. So that, for me, they're the technologies. Now, each of those has its own ecosystem. And with each, within each ecosystem comes complexity. It is not a surprise that we keep thinking about the next big thing, the next thing that I need to be thinking about, because there's so many within intelligent automation, there's so many different capabilities to be thinking about. And just about every organization, I would say, would have a use for all of those things that I mentioned. Now, that usage may be this much, or it may be this much. When you add them all into the mix, I think that's when you're starting to going to get transformational change of work. But only if, and I'll go back to the very first points that I raised today, that only works if you've got the right culture, the right processes, your people on board. Because if you don't have that softer side, then all you have over here is some shiny objects. You have some pilots, you have a bit of goodwill, and you are not creating transformational change. You're probably creating the legacy of tomorrow. So,
Related question, Wayne, right there. We mentioned culture, we mentioned technology stack. It's all wonderful, right? You also mentioned very important aspect of human existence, empathy. Okay, so do you see companies changing their approach? Because it used to be very top down. So I'm introducing new technology. I'm in charge of this business unit. This is the new vendor we're working with. This is how you're gonna do your job from now on. There was no empathy not long ago with employees. Okay, so where do you see that new wave of human automation coming? With empathy, with understanding what's really taking, people's job or what's taking them to do, their work every day.
well, I think organizations have realized that you have to automate with your people, not to replace your people. And whether that is, from whether that's empathetic or not, there is a realization that I hope there's a realization. If there isn't, there should be. You can't do this without your people. They have to come on the journey with you. When you don't bring them on the journey, you will slow down, stall, make mistakes. Why? Because the vast majority of the stuff that you need is in their heads, right? And they can make it easy or not to get at that information. Now, there are kind of some ways around this, right? And that's where process mining, task mining kind of comes in, because although you don't necessarily get to understand why they're making decisions, why they're doing these actions, you can at least use technology and data to say what has happened. So that helps to some degree, but really the vast majority of expertise within any organization does not sit in an SOP document. It sits in the experience that sits within your people. And so the only way that you can progress at any form of speed is to bring your people on that particular journey. And that has to come because they want to, okay, not because they're forced to. And therefore, I would hope that there has been an understanding that this is a journey that they will come on with you. And I think technology has realized that, because if you think about the no code, low code movement, it is all designed around non-technical people. Take that with a pinch of salt, but generally around non-technical people being enabled to use technology that historically was reserved for those within the technology, within IT departments. So the technology is now here. Hopefully there's a realization that people are valuable in any organization, and their knowledge is not something that you're ever going to be able to just get if you don't bring them on that journey. So those two things combined, I think, are both pushing, I would like to think, organizations into the right way to generate change. And the other thing, of course, is the reason, your why. If your why is all about cost out, it's all about reducing your operational expenditure, and it's all about people's work being removed, jobs being replaced, that's probably not going to get you where you actually want to go. And ISG research shows that the most successful automation programs that we've spent lots of time researching this, the most successful automation programs are those that do not think about just cost out, but they're well-rounded, they're well-funded, they are accepted. It's a really strong word. They are accepted within the organization as the right thing to do for their business to move it forward, not just because it's saving money. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily even save money, but it's the right thing to do. Your why is for a positive reason, not for a let's just save us some bucks, right? That's not
Let's talk. Yeah. Wait. Let's talk about a little bit about democratization of automation. All right, because again, as automation platforms gets adapted across, you mentioned insurance, banking, healthcare, every industry, pretty much, right? So the lines between the silos, traditional silos, blurring. All right, development, working with marketing, with sales, you name it, right? All these organizational shifts that happening right now, right? What about democratization? It used to be really engineering job to put together a workflow. If you look at some older tools, you
Mm-hmm.
have to be a PhD to
Yeah.
implement something across enterprise, right? Where do you see that movement is now?
Oh, I am massively on the fence on this, and I'll tell you why. I I'm a big believer that the role of a citizen being enabled to use technology can be, in the right environment, a very positive thing. But I'm also incredibly mindful that we still have a job to do. We still have an end customer at the end of this, and we still have to support a business and KPIs and financial results and all of that. When done in the right way, and when there's well-rounded support and budget and all of this good stuff, I'm all for it. If we believe that democratizing technology in the enterprise is just a cheap way of trying to get development completed, then we are doomed to failure. We need to realize that citizen developers will only ever be successful if they are well funded. And I don't just mean throwing money at them, I mean well funded with time and support and the right technology. Like, we have to set them up to succeed. And I'll give you a couple of stats that I've kind of seen, researched, etc. There's a number of clients, and this is an average, right? So don't take it as gospel, but for every 20 people that are trained as a citizen developer in unsupported programs, those where you get a little bit of training and you get told to do some stuff, only 1 in 20 of those citizen developers will ordinarily produce more than one automation ever. Now, that is not, that's not transformational. That is not that's not a positive thing at all. And the rationale, and I'm sure there's some other research that came out via UiPath not too long ago, and I think it was I think it was with Forrester. I may be wrong. It may have been McKinsey, but what they basically said was that something like 75% of organizations with citizen developer programs do not give their citizen developers any additional time to do citizen development, which basically means they have a job and this is on top of it. So it shouldn't really be a surprise that even though they gave them the technology, they gave them a little bit of training, they didn't invest time in them. They didn't give them time in order to make, to deliver automations. And so, when I talk about investment, it's not always money. Actually, it's time and support, and that that does come at a cost. But it's not it has to happen. And I think maybe that's not realized at the moment. And so when I say successful citizen developer programs, the democratization of technology will only work when we invest in our people. As I say, that is with time, support, training, and technology. It's when you get all of those things combined, that's when you will have a successful citizen program, not when you look at it as a cheap way of getting resource into your COE. And that's that's something I've come to realize over the last 12 months when I've seen where we've had positive and where we've really, really struggled. And it's those four things I think are the key differences that I've noticed.
Excellent point. Truly, yeah. So going back to empathy, by the way, right? If you don't empathize with those citizen developers, right? If they don't get enough training or experience, simply they cannot be best at their jobs they're supposed to do. Fantastic, fantastic point. So let's talk about AI a little bit. Okay, the big scary one or very helpful AI out there. All right. So you mentioned few capabilities that now a must in this automation stack for every company. What are the crucial, I would say, the crucial ones you want to highlight?
Like the big one for me, if I'm completely honest, and I think about this quite a lot, has got to be, well, two really. Okay, natural language, anything to do with language, and I'm often asked, well, why? Well, we as people literally spend 80% of our time in work communicating in one form or another, reading an email, writing an email, doing a PowerPoint, writing a report, thinking about something, communicating, conference calls. Like this is natural language, right? And so I think natural language, if we crack the whole automation of many of these kind of activities, it's all going to stem from this branch of AI known as natural language processing. It really excites me, to be honest, because I think about natural language processing, I think of natural language understanding, I think of things like natural language generation, and these are all kind of streams within natural language that all are important as you think about things like chatbots, as you think about things like static responses, sentiment analysis, translation, the generation of new text from data or from external sources is growing. Things like GPT-3 and the potential use of that type of capability within the organization. All of these things really that the whole world of language is a big one for me. Of course, data analytics and machine learning will, I think, be also transformational. People do talk about AI as it's this one big thing. The reality is in an organization, it could actually be many, many things. And, machine learning being another one, machine vision, expert systems, there is lots of different user cases within this realm of AI. But I'd say machine learning from a data perspective, making predictions, etc., is going to be really important, and anything to do with language. So those two, I would say, are my kind of big bets. Because if an organization nails both of those, I think they go, and of course it does depend on the type of organization, I think they go a long way towards being, at the upper echelons of AI usage, within their industry. If you can truly get these two capabilities working across all of those different types of user cases, I think you have it nailed for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And then, of course, there are other aspects. If you're in manufacturing, for example, then something like machine vision is going to be really critical in your factories. Predictive maintenance on your machines. There are always nuances, but just about every organization, in fact, I would say every organization in the world, interacts and operates through the use of language. And so that's the reason why I think that's such a generic capability, and why I think natural language is going to be the kicker. And if I start to think about the future, how cool is it going to be for us to have, an Alexa for business? Irene, can you get me last month's report on X, Y, and Z? And so, universal search, an Alexa for business, that transforms your ability to get data. I mean, the average person spends nearly an hour a day. I easily spend that searching for things, right? Natural language in theory could help. It's not necessarily the only capability that you need, but it's a capability. The ability, and we're starting to see this generation. So imagine on your emails, if you could see an auto-generated response on emails that are coming in that you just have to fine tune. There's that there. Obviously, we've got voice bots, conversational AI within customer service, and what that is able to do with regards to create efficiencies. So, there's loads of stuff going on. We are literally scratching the surface, I would say. And obviously it very much excites me as being knee deep in this and helping organizations on their journey.
Fantastic, Wayne. Yeah, thank you so very much. Insightful talk today. Absolutely. In summary, those, okay, can't believe audiences with a few takeaways. Where do you see we're going next?
Okay, where are we going next? So I would say that we are, we're very much on a journey. Very much on a journey. And have been, and I think we are currently at the moment rewriting some of the rules that maybe we've been following over the last kind of 3 to 5 years in this world of automation. We've realized that shiny objects are not, going to be the transformational beings that we expected, and that actually, regardless of how easy a technology is to use, it's actually the people, the culture, the strategy that is going to really help us drive the use of these technologies moving forward. So I think there's going to be a lot of stop, reset, and restart over the next kind of 12 months. So that's what I think we're going to do from an approach perspective. From a technology perspective, I think we're going to continue to see usage of things like RPA, but I think we're going to see the increase in usage of things like process mining and task mining. And the rationale for that clearly is that a data-led approach and understanding of your business and your process, I believe, is going to be the cornerstone of the enterprise of the future. We are going to rely less on human interpretation of work, and we are going to look at the data-led approach of how work gets done. Now, we still need to, as people, input into why we are doing things, but that data layer that our processes should provide, I think, is going to become more important, and therefore task mining, process mining, communications mining are going to become equally important over the next kind of 12, 18 months. So they're probably the two things that I think are going to be big. And then from an advice perspective, it's never too late to start. I think that's kind of number one. There is such a helpful community of experts with expertise that is now incredibly prevalent on platforms like LinkedIn, and many of them will have been your guests, Irene. So hats off to everybody who's been on the show historically. Don't be afraid to ask for help, support. And the other thing is the last piece, the complexity of the problems that automation is now solving, I would say is on an exponential curve itself. We are solving problems now using these technologies that 12, 18 months ago we certainly were not. And that really excites me as well, because what it means is that the technologies, even though we're talking about no code, low code, I've mentioned loads of different types of technologies, solutions, platforms, etc. They are changing the way that we do work. They are solving problems that we were unable to solve not too long ago. And so it is a really exciting time, not one to be worried about, one to be excited about, because that really does free us up, to be more empathetic, to be more human in the work that we do.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. I like the future you describe where we get to be more human because of technology, with the help of technology, than being afraid, of course, of how technology is going to replace us soon. So, from what I understood today, Wayne, is not happening anytime. And every technology implementation you're describing requires a lot of human effort, a lot of human ingenuity. So let's see what's happening next. Wayne, thank you so very much for your time today. I love this talk. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you for having me.